Hi, friends. Welcome to Elements of Culture. I'm going to teach you guys a little bit about all of the little pieces that make up what we refer to as culture. So, first, let's talk about the definition of culture. So, you've probably been introduced to this word back in elementary school, and it probably has come up back again in middle school. And you might hear it in your everyday life when people talk about different kinds of cultures or they refer to culture. So, the dictionary, if you will, definition of culture is the way that a group of people live. And it can include how they think, and it can include the things that are important to them and their values. It can be material culture, so it can be all the stuff that they have in front of them, the things they wear, the things they eat, the things that they talk about. So it's really just the way that a group of people live. So, because we're talking about a group of people, it can be in reference to any type of group. So we can talk about like the culture of India. We can talk about the culture of Western Europe, but we can also talk about the culture of any sociological group. So we can even say, like, there's such thing as hip hop culture. So anybody who's affiliated with hip hop or rap music, there's a culture there. There's a way that people interact with each other. There's a way they talk. There's a way that they dress. There's a way that they hang out and do fun things. So culture can be in reference to just about anything. St. Charles East High School has a culture. St. Charles teenagers are a culture. So, because that's a group, there's a way that people talk, there's a way they interact. So, when we use the word culture, we could be referring to any group of people. Okay? Subculture. I want us to get used to using that word too. Subculture is a smaller culture that's also part of a larger culture. So if we think of culture as being like circles, concentric circles would be the subcultures. So in the United States, let's say we have like American culture, right? But people who live in the South, their culture is a little bit different from like our culture and the way that we act here. Any of you who have traveled to the South United States or have lived there would know that some of the food is a little bit different. The way that they talk is a little different. Even some of the words they use are different. The way they think is a little different. Some of the things they do are different. Some of it's the same, and we're going to talk about why, but subculture is basically a smaller group within a larger group. I mentioned a few more on here. Evangelical Christians, hockey culture, like they even wear their hair a certain way. St. Charles moms are a culture. Your moms are probably part of that group, and we all have kind of like some ways of talking and interacting. So that's what a subculture is. I want you to think about some other examples of subcultures. Just list a few. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the elements of culture. And as you can see from this graphic, I have broken culture up into different sections. And really, a lot of it is going to reflect ESPN, which we've been learning about. So, economics, social, political, and environment, all of these different elements of culture are going to fall under some of those ESPN categories. Let's start with customs and traditions, which is clearly, it can be thought of as a social element of culture, but it can also refer to the way that we interact politically in terms of power and relationships with power, the way we vote, the way that we elect a leader, the way that we think about our power and what kinds of power we have. So it can be that, it can be, like I said, it can be economic as well, because customs and traditions can be the things that we do to get what we need and want. So, like a custom and tradition in our culture is to go shopping. We love shopping, as evidenced by our material landscape. You can see our cultural landscape when you drive up and down Randall Road or you drive east and west on 64. You can see that we get services from all of these different places and we buy stuff, and that's a big part of our culture. So it's essentially the behaviors. What is it that you do regularly? We can even talk about customs and traditions as being like the food we eat. It can be the music we listen to. It can be the way that we get an education. It can be the way we talk, the things that we think are good to do. And also, it can involve the things that we think are bad to do. So, norms are a specific, it's the expected behavior. So within customs and traditions, when we talk about norms, these are the things that everybody just kind of agrees is what we do as a culture. Hygiene is a big norm in our culture. So, like in our culture, you would not expect someone to smell bad. You just kind of expect that they're going to take care of their hygiene and they're going to be clean and they're not going to smell bad. In fact, in our culture, it's like expected that you smell good. So we wear deodorant, we wear perfumes. I'm sure your homes have all kinds of air fresheners. So that would be an example of a norm. Sometimes norms are made into laws to make sure that everybody follows them. So, an example of that would be a law that says you have to drive down the right side of the road. And of course, it's to keep us safe and to make sure that people can get where they need to go without major traffic jams. But that's something specific to our culture that's been made into a law. So, all traffic regulations would be norms that have been made into laws. And then, of course, we make rules sometimes too. Like these are the things that are actually written down to make sure that we do what we need to do. Taboos are the opposite of norms. These are the behaviors that you just don't do in your culture. They're incredibly frowned upon and may even be considered immoral or wrong. Often, taboos are also turned into laws. So, like in our culture, we talk about like murder being so bad, like taking another person's life is like one of the worst possible things you can do. So there's a law that's made that says if you do, there's going to be consequences. Like it's absolutely written down and enforced by our government and against the law. Let's think of some other things in our culture that are considered taboo. Well, before we think about other examples, I love to make the reference about growing up. I grew up in a church. And one of the biggest things about church when I was growing up was that you were quiet during the church service. And so, like, if you shouted something out, that would be considered really, really taboo. And I guess in my childlike brain, I used to imagine sit in church just to like entertain myself and imagine all of the taboos that I could possibly do. I would never do them, but just thinking about it, like, what if I just started laughing really, really loud? Or what if I got up and just started running up and down the aisle and screaming information about my cat? So just things like that would be considered absolute taboos. Um, I want you guys to see a little clip. I'm going to have you guys click on the link and watch a little clip that kind of helps us to understand norms. I like to think about being in an elevator because when you're in an elevator, what do you do and what do you not do? So we're going to take a look at this just for fun. Okay, languages are also part of culture. It's definitely an element of culture. So this refers to the way that we communicate. It's based in history, but it can change over time as we start to interact with other groups. So this is kind of what binds us together because it shapes our thoughts and our thinking, and this is how we communicate with one another. And without language, we would not be able to survive. It's completely the way that we take whatever thoughts and ideas and values that are in our head and transmit them. And it's very, if you speak a different language, it can really affect the way that you relate to people. Okay. All right, arts and literature. This is kind of in the category of language as well, because it's the way that you communicate ideas and thoughts and beliefs through art. So this can be music, this can be dance, this can be literature, this can be visual art, this can be culinary art or food. So I want you guys to think about in art, how is a value or a belief reflected in the art? Okay, Religion is the way that beliefs are organized into a sense of morality, and very frequently a belief in a supernatural power like a god. Okay, there are two categories of religions that we're going to be discussing, and we're going to get into this a whole lot more in the next unit. But for now, we're going to explain how religions will be either monotheistic, where there's a belief in one God. Those religions are Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. And then polytheistic religions are ones that have multiple gods and goddesses. And one of the largest polytheistic religion in our world is Hinduism. We will also learn in the next unit about Buddhism as well. So those are the largest religions in the world. In our country, all five of them are present. So we're going to get into details about religion and types of conflicts that happen as a result of religion, and the way that religion brings people together as well. But that's in the next unit. Okay, family structures. So we need to think about how in different cultures they organize themselves into social groups, and primarily the family is the core unit where all of the education comes through, where all of your economics is taken care of. So all your needs and wants are given to you through your family. And that's true of literally every culture in the world. Two types of family structures that I want you to be aware of. One is nuclear family. In a nuclear family, you have two generations. So you have the parents, or the adults that are one generation above, and then the children. So it's basically mom, dad, and kids. It can be mom and mom. It can be dad and dad. It can be uncle and aunt. It can be whatever. It does not have to be blood related. It can be a blended family. But the idea is that it is two generations, the adults and the children. This is most common in regions that are core countries and Western regions. So that would be the United States and Europe. Extended families have multi generations in one household. So you would have your grandparents living with you, or a great uncle or a great aunt, or other aunts and uncles and cousins. Okay, that would be an extended family. This is more common in periphery and semi periphery countries, but also sometimes it's not always a reflection of standard of living, because sometimes it is just cultural, because non-Western regions of the world are more likely to live in extended families. So it could be a very wealthy family, but grandma lives there with the kids and grandkids and aunts and uncles and cousins. So that's family structure. Okay, some other terms to know about family structures. Patriarchal societies or patriarchal cultures are those whereas the man or the male gender has most of the power. Okay, so men are in an authority position in a patriarchal society. Often you hear the word patriarchy in reference to men having power over women. Okay, a matriarchal culture, and there are very few, but there are some, are places where women have the authority and are the power structure. Many cultures, especially in wealthier societies, so in your core countries, you're starting to see more shared authority. And this is a change over time. Okay, so we've mentioned gender. Gender refers to the characteristics and expectations that are associated with our concept of male, female, and anything on that spectrum anywhere in between. So again, these are expectations. In other words, what are some of the norms? What are the things that we expect of someone who is predominantly female, or someone who is predominantly male, or someone who is somewhere in between. That's what we mean when we're talking about gender. These will vary depending on the culture. In some cultures, gender expectations are very rigid. Okay, that means they're not fluid. If you are born with female body parts, then the expectation is that you behave a certain way. And same thing for male. Two other terms that I want you to be aware of are the term misogyny. We may refer to that a little bit in this class, and that is a word that means a negative attitude about women. Be very careful when you use this term because often it is taken as an attack. So sometimes people will say, okay, if you refer to something as misogynistic, whoa, 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 nobody's being misogynistic. So just think about that. It's a real thing. It's a negative attitude about women. Be careful when you use that term. And I'm going to have you guys take a look at a little link about attitudes about gender equality. And then you guys are going to answer some questions.